Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the news. Today is September 1st. And today we're doing... What are we doing? We're doing security and... Was it business?
Business.
21 is almost gone.
Yeah. It's fall now. We got to prepare our fine meals for the winter ahead.
Oh, that reminds me. The Pi KVM, it's the Raspberry Pi. There's a KVM. They have a Kickstarter now. I just thought
Why would you encourage a competitor?
The Pi? No. It's a remote control. You can combine it with our KVM and then have a multi-port KVM that works over the network.
We should immediately start making that product.
It's a little trickier than that. They did a lot of software that I don't want to do. I only had to do a little bit of software.
Let's steal their software.
Somebody did steal their software, but I don't know. There's a Kickstarter for the Pi KVM. Check that out.
Well, Raspberry Pi, I think, is definitely a hardware company that has a lot of goodwill from their consumers. Wouldn't you say?
Yes.
Does anybody hate Raspberry Pi?
No, they've never done anything horribly evil.
Yeah, they tend to sell you what they say they're going to sell you. They give it to you for some very reasonable prices.
The most terrible thing they've ever done has been around their PoE hats, which they can't seem to get right for some reason.
But I don't think they're doing that on purpose.
No, they're fixing it. It's just it takes a couple of tries.
This one, on the other hand, I think this was on purpose.
It definitely was. Western Digital has been caught bait and switching customers with slow SSDs. So what happened here is a modern SSD has fast cells and slow cells, and it has to do with density. And so they switched out from a low density cell to the lowest density cell. And the thing is, this SSD would perform exactly identical to two different models. Well, actually, they were the same model, but the two different models with the different components would perform identically until you hit the wall of the faster cache, the faster flash that's used as a cache. And then once you hit that wall, the other one would perform significantly slower.
This is on top of their last scandal, which also affected the storage.
Mechanical hard drives,
we did multiple stories about Western Digital's crap failing.
They weren't the only ones,
yeah,
but they were a big one.
I think the shingled magnetic one is a much worse situation because it's immediately slow always in all scenarios. At least with this one, it's not slower than advertised in all scenarios. It's just when you run out of the faster flash type that it becomes much slower.
But I think it's more insidious that way.
I think that they should have disclosed that a lot louder, or probably used a different model number.
But then no one would buy it. Samsung has also done something very nasty. And this is another one of those things where you have to ask, what could possibly be the reasoning for this? What excuse could you possibly give other than to screw the consumer for doing something you don't like?
I know the answer. Samsung kills the cameras on the Galaxy Z Fold 3 if you unlock the bootloader. They're going the Sony route. They're going as anti-consumer as possible. I think the reason for this is because there are a lot of ads now baked into the Samsung family of applications. They've promised to remove them. They are being very slow about removing those ads, and I think that this is to discourage you from DIYing that.
My question was, if not to screw the consumer.
Well, I mean, it's to prevent the consumer from removing the ads, which I guess
screws them.
Yeah.
This screws the user.
They're not intentionally screwing the user, but they're doing it for profit.
You know what's crazy?
They are doing it intentionally.
Somebody I know got that phone, and I got to play with it for about 15 or 20 minutes. It was actually a surprisingly good experience.
For the folding one?
Uh-oh, are you getting the...
yeah,
the
it's like, I don't know. It costs too much. I don't know that I want it.
You're just angling for somebody to send you one. Sausage toes.
Oh, it just thundered.
There it is.
My $350 OnePlus phone is so good that it makes me not want to pay significantly more than that for a phone. And oh boy, that phone is significantly more than that.
But think how cool you'll look.
It is nice having the giant screen.
Think about how the envy of all the other people as you whip it out and unfold it.
I would probably drop it while unfolding it.
And then the cool factor just goes down dramatically.
I struggle in the one that's got the keyboard. A lot of the awesomeness of having the keyboard is lost on me because I struggle to open it without dropping it.
I noticed you kind of abandoned that phone as much as you championed it.
Yeah, I use it for troubleshooting things and like when I need a remote Linux and like it's something super portable, but it's too hard to open.
Also, Ryan, did you drive your nice car here today?
I did. Yeah.
Ooh.
Oh.
But I have to wash it tomorrow anyway, so
Okay.
I was kind of okay with it. It was a calculated risk, much like the jab. So this story, they don't mention it, but I think I can read between the lines here. And they do give us a heading here saying that J.Y. Lee, just days ago, got out of prison. Now I wonder if I had somebody in prison and I were a country and I wanted to negotiate, and he was a billionaire, and I wanted to negotiate something good for my country to let him out, what would I ask for?
Samsung to hire 40,000 in $205 billion 3-year spree. So Samsung, again, they fly under the radar for some reason. They're enormous, but they're also one of the world's largest chip makers. And so they're saying, hey, for the next 5 years, the whole chip shortage thing, none of that's going away. Everybody, I don't care if you're a toaster maker or a phone maker, you want 5 and 7 nanometer chips because they're more efficient, they're more powerful, blah blah blah. We need more of them than ever, and Samsung doesn't see that going away. So they're producing memory, they're producing storage, they're producing microprocessors. Microprocessors by transistor count really isn't where everything is now. Storage. I mean, we have trillions of transistors in modern storage devices like NAND flash, sort of, kind of, and yeah, that's a lot.
And clearly Western Digital can't get enough of it. Obviously.
Yeah, obviously. Oh, that's foreshadowing for another story.
Oh, it's the one we just did.
No, it's Western Digital and Kioxia.
All right. Oh, those should go together. It might be a different. No, this should be a business, right?
Yeah.
I missed the sort there.
Whoops.
Well, TSMC, a lot of people have been seeing this coming for a long time. I think they waited as long as they possibly could.
They could, yeah.
And what can you do here? They have to do this.
TSMC hikes chip prices up to 20% amid a supply shortage. The Taiwanese company faces earnings pressure with plans for overseas plants. I think this is probably, if we get a functioning plant here in America that is 7 nanometer or below, fine.
I think that would cost more than 20%, though, don't you think?
Yeah, but if they're saying that we need to do 20% now in order to be able to afford that, as long as
we're going to pay for that?
Yeah.
Nah, that'd be nice because the rest of the world can pay for it, too.
Yeah.
Since when does the U.S. ever get money from somebody else? It'd be nice for a change. Well, Bosch is a big company that supplies automotive stuff, and obviously we've learned that those cars desperately need chips, and these guys are losing their patience.
Bosch says the semiconductor supply chains in the car industry no longer work, and they're going to have to figure something out. Mainly the complaint here is that the semiconductor industry hasn't figured out how to do just-in-time manufacturing. They basically faked it by looking at the history of the thing and then doing the Monte Carlo analysis and basically just sort of saying, all right, we're just going to put a room full of wafers in there and we'll sell them to you whenever you need them. But it takes us 6 months to set up and spin up your chips. So here in the global questionable situation, that's not really going to happen. What I think is going to happen with the whole chips industry is that automotive, except for the whole AI self-driving thing, cars don't need 12 and 7 and 5 nanometers CPU or processed silicon. They need power transistors. They need door locks and door controls and crap like that. I think that probably an entrepreneur is going to pop up here with some kind of rapid thing that's on some garbage process from 15 years ago that's an inkjet process instead of a photolithographic process on silicon, and then that person is going to be making really crappy silicon by modern standards, but it's exactly what the automotive industry needs, and it will go for those bargain basement prices the automotive industry is looking for. Samsung doesn't need to be making high-end ICs for the automotive industry, except for the AI and the self-driving.
I think you're wrong about that. I think the amount of horsepower you need to time 8 cylinders and decide when to pull 4 of them out of the block on demand?
You can do that with an FPGA.
Maybe, but you're also looking to minimize the space because the car engines are getting super crowded.
I think that the heat and the road noise and debris and vibration and crap like that, I don't think that 14 nanometers and below is a good solution for that. I think for industrial controllers like that, a bigger process like a 60 nanometer is probably the ideal sweet spot of efficiency and power and ruggedness.
But I bet if you were to standardize a lot of stuff in the car industry, which whether they will fight you tooth and nail,
Yeah.
you could also solve this problem.
That is
solve
true.
it faster.
Probably would solve that faster, yes.
Yeah.
Your entire car runs on 73 Atmel microcontrollers.
Yeah, and when one goes bad, your local mechanic can just pop it out and replace it. That's why they'll never do it.
Yeah.
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 Well, this is old news at this point. I put this in the business section because, it's the banks. We already knew this. We already talked about it yesterday, but this is why.
The Financial Times, OnlyFans CEO, and why the site is banning the content. They're not now, but it says the short answer is banks. But they found some banks that were willing to do business. How crazy is it that the HSBC is willing to do business with terrorists and drug lords, but something like this is like, well, that's too risky.
But I don't understand. Maybe for your 60-plus-year-old customers, maybe that matters. But I got to think to anybody under 25, aren't we going in the other direction where like sex workers are celebrated and all of this?
I think there's also a concern of like some of that content might not be legal,
But
and they don't want to be caught up in that.
so you think the bank they fear that they would be liable?
Yeah, in some way, or just be bad press for
They
them.
certainly don't seem to be worried about arms dealing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, there's so much terrible stuff that goes through the banks.
but arms dealing is probably something condoned by the U.S. government. Whereas, if the site that you're doing banking for is hosting CP, you can get in trouble from the government about that.
The U.S. government did used to sell arms under the table, but these days what we like to do is just airdrop in military equipment and then leave. That's our new
Whoever
thing.
gets it,
Yeah.
it's like a loot crate in PUBG.
We put out an honesty jar. It's like, all right, put $10 million in this if you want this helicopter. Apple regularly patents things, and because they're Apple, there's an army of sleuths out there just constantly poring over them, and they've found something interesting.
Apple wins a patent for dual display MacBook with virtual keyboard and wireless charging capabilities. Like you lay the phone on the laptop and then it wirelessly charges. I really hope the hardware hacker that did the wirelessly charging your phone in the wrist pad of the laptop has posts and stuff somewhere, because that would be nice, because I don't want Apple to get a patent on that.
Could they ever make a pure software keyboard livable?
I don't think so.
I can't imagine.
I had that Lenovo Yoga Pad that had that. It had an e-ink display on one side and LCD display on the other. And it was nice, but it was not something that I wanted to do a lot of typing on.
You could probably outrun it very easily, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's the rain. Oh, here's our missort. Western Digital.
Oh, embarrassing.
Maybe, they're having some trouble supplying things, and one of the ways you might be able to get around that is start acquiring.
Western Digital and Kioxia in talks to create a chipmaker giant, according to source. So Western Digital is pivoting more into storage, and Kioxia is, of course, the flash storage division of what was formerly known as Toshiba. But Kioxia is kicking butt and taking names too. They've come out with a lot of really innovative products, including, and I don't know why this wasn't obvious to everybody in the market, they're making things like serial attached SCSI flash drives, modern flash available in an old interface, because your old server is probably fine, especially if you replace the old spinning rust disks in it with flash disks, and no one else is really doing that to that level.
So we'll see if they get any of this merger static that everybody else is getting. What do you think their lobbying efforts are currently?
Well, this is a Japanese company mainly, so it'll probably just be fine.
Oh, I'm sure they have a Western lobbying arm.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. They do so much business here. It's a lot of rain.
Yeah, the rain is getting harder.
Ooh, it's not going to be good for my basement. Well, Google has had a bit of a problem lately with their uppity employees. Oh, they want to have us. That's like, oh, you can't kill people with military contracts. We don't like that. Oh, AI needs to have ethics. You can't have killer robots. And Google is saying, all right, you know what? We didn't define the lines before, but now we're just going to straight up tell you.
Google staff have no right to protest its choice of clients. So Google has formally sent a memo, I guess, to its employees saying, hey, we're going to work for some people, and not everybody likes all of the people that we're going to work for. That is not an okay thing to debate.
You have no input there. Get back to your cubicle. and crank out more diverse emojis.
Which is kind of funny because the U.S. government is like, well, you can't have Iran as a client. Clearly.
You think that will make Google lose more talent? Because are they also one of the ones requiring people start coming back into the office?
Yeah, I
They
think
flirted with it, but then the plus might have slowed them down.
Yeah.
I really think a lot of these things are kind of a stealth layoff from Google. Because if you look at the pattern and connect the dots, the coming back into the office thing, the pay cut thing, this thing, and some other unpopular things, like basically the laundry list of every unpopular thing Google has wanted to do for the last 5 years.
They've just put it off until now.
Yeah, they're trying to cram it all through, and that's why I think maybe it's kind of a stealth layoff.
Google also has a pretty spotty track record of releasing things that are contrary to the consumer good. And one of the ways in the modern day that you can kind of try to tiptoe around that is to create an oversight committee that's basically toothless. But they chose the wrong man for the job.
Jeremy Keith has resigned from the AMP Advisory Committee. It has become clear to me that AMP remains a Google product. AMP stands for Accelerated Mobile Pages. It's a kind of standard that combines HTML and JavaScript and packing so that when you're on mobile, things will be insanely fast on mobile because chances are your internet connection is garbage. Chances are your screen can't download high-resolution images. There's probably a lot of things that are up with the, in terms of edge cases for having a good mobile experience. And Google is building a lot of their own stuff, like email, their mobile email stuff around Accelerated Mobile Pages or AMP. And so after a couple of years, the people that are on AMP is like, hey, the parts of this that should be open source are still not open source. And this is part of the OpenJS Foundation. So we're not really accomplishing anything here anymore. I resign.
Yikes. What do you think he was getting paid?
The article said that it made it sound like he wasn't getting paid at all.
Screw that, yeah.
The article made it sound like he's like, I would do this if it was open source, but since Google controls it and they haven't open sourced the key parts, that's why I'm out.
Yeah, it's a good move. Smart thing to do. Don't get in bed with the corporate masters, ever. I don't care how nice they are to you. They're not your friends. Netflix, for a while, has been teasing. They're like, yeah, we're getting into gaming. And a lot of people are like, do we really need another gaming subscription service? We kind of have a lot right now. And Netflix says, you know what? We're going to do it. But boy, did they half-ass it.
Netflix takes its first stab at mobile gaming in its Android app, but only in Poland, and only with mobile games that it had previously developed for other campaigns.
And only 2 of them.
And they're both Stranger Things themed. It's like their ad agency was just sitting around. It's like, well, I guess we got these apps that we did before. Let's roll it out in Poland.
And you can play them in other places. So, not much here. But they claim they're going to do more. So we'll see.
And then all the gaming shows, which used to be exciting games, are now just mobile games for like Netflix and stuff. And it's like, oh, this is garbage.
Yeah. We'll always have the indie roguelikes, Krista. That's where you have to put your faith. Cheating in video games, we were talking about this last week, man. PUBG got real bad. I don't think they've ever managed to get a handle on that, have they?
No.
A lot of big games, popular games, they don't know how to deal with this. It used to be when they told you they were putting anti-cheat or DRM on a video game, you'd be like, oh, God. Should I just pirate it? Because I know they're going to take that out. But now, apparently, people clamoring for it.
Anti-cheat services in video games are now a selling point. You know, there's a lot of streamers that get frustrated because they're getting sniped through walls, and game companies don't seem to be able to do much about it. It is kind of nuts because we've gotten to the point where with like real-time vision processing, you can have one computer hooked up to another computer through a capture card. And actually, that's fast enough that if you've got one of like the neural accelerators, like, you know, the machine learning accelerators that you can just buy for like $1,000, those are fast enough to do real-time 30 FPS 1080p analysis and do things like play StarCraft and click on people's heads. And it's just mouse movements and keyboards, so there's not a lot of, you know, stuff the game developers can go on in terms of anti-cheat because there's not even anything running on the computer.
Imagine you build a bare bones system. You're probably going to spend at least $2,000 to build around that card, right?
Yeah.
Imagine you spent $2,000 to cheat at PUBG.
Well, it's like people pay for aimbots in Overwatch, and it's like, Why? Or they pay to get their account boosted to Grandmaster, and then it's like they get back into Grandmaster, and then they immediately fall again. It's like, what are you paying for?
What do you think the amount of buyer's remorse is for that stuff? Do they feel like they're getting their money's worth?
I think in PUBG, when those guys are just, laughing and trolling and stuff, they're absolutely getting their money's worth at like $1,000 or $2,000. They just enjoy the horrible suffering and misery of other people.
The chaos of it.
$2,000? Somebody should introduce them to strip clubs. Same artificial joy, right? Same artificial feeling good about yourself. But you get more from it. Well, Tesla, one thing about Tesla that it seems to be true is early adoption was a really, really bad idea. Because there was a lot of little things that were wrong that they fixed along the way. But those cars are still out there. What can you do?
Older Tesla vehicles to get a UI performance boost thanks to famed video game engineer. Who are we talking about? John Carmack, of course, from the Doom fame.
Why is he involved? He's got one of those cars, and he's angry about the performance. And he's got enough of a name that he can get Elon Musk on the phone.
Yeah, I don't think this took place on Twitter, but I like to think that this was, a Twitter thing where it was like, hey, this sucks. And Elon Musk is like, all right, if you think you can do better, do better. And he's like, I'm John Carmack. I will. And he did. And then Elon Musk is like, oh.
No, I don't think Elon Musk admits wrongdoing. I don't think that's how he works.
John Carmack's got to be pushing 60, right? Or is he higher than that?
I think he's just about 60, yeah.
Does he have the long hair still?
No, the last photo I saw of him, he had sort of like the Bill Gates 90s cut.
Those guys thought they were rock stars.
He's still a rock star.
No, they're not.
No.
You look at those documentaries and it's like, what are these guys thinking? Come on, buddy. Cut your hair. Well, if we all think back about the adpocalypse and the second adpocalypse and then the shaking off of all of our subscribers, a lot of people said, why? Why are they doing this? Well, if you didn't already know, they've said it in the plainest English possible. Axios
reports that YouTube has said that content policing is good for business because the same people that want to control OnlyFans also want to control everything else. So,
wow, there's a lot of depth to that statement. That's true. First, they came for the thoughts.
Yeah,
and I said nothing
because I was not a thought. Content policing, good for, I bet, if you have less channels to promote, that means less spaces for ads, and people are willing to pay more for ads because you want to be seen on the big channel.
And you don't have to worry about the ad people, calling you up and being like, hey, there was a great thing. I saw a headline. There's new wrestling promotions are popping up. Like Vince McMahon is almost dead and he's losing his grip. So these, little small promotions are popping up. And one of them, they have a character, and his gimmick is he brings a pizza cutter to the ring, which in terms of weapons. But just through sheer coincidence, while he was pizza cutting someone's face on the screen, they were doing that picture-in-picture ad thing. It was Domino's. That's the kind of thing Google cannot let happen on YouTube. And Google Pay, wow, I had no idea. Did we ever cover this before?
We did, yeah.
I don't remember it, but wow, after reading this, it's just like, how can that powerful a company have a whole division this dysfunctional?
Look at the analytics team.
I complain about this kind of thing all the time. It's like Google Pay team reportedly in major upheaval after a botched app revamp. And it's like, I don't understand why people would be so upset that we revamped the Pay application. Because none of the people on that team, it's pretty obvious, have ever actually tried to use the app to pay for anything.
So they brought in a guy who was part of Google Pay India. And his whole idea was, we're going to make this exactly like Google Pay India because I'm familiar with Google Pay India. And his subordinates were like, sir, we would have to remove almost all the features to do that. And his response was, yeah.
Sounds good.
So then for a while, they had two competing Google Pays.
Yes.
You could have two apps on the same phone, but they were not related at all.
At one point, you would get an error message if you launched the old one because it was like, no, you need to go to the new one, and you just couldn't do certain things in the new one.
But it was a different account on the new one, right? And you had to transfer your
Yes.
money. It's just an astonishing failure.
Yeah, it's not unlike what happened on YouTube when they did the YouTube Studio migration, and it was like Yeah.
I guess they're just powerful enough that it doesn't matter. You'll deal with it.
Again, like I don't understand how this has happened, but they've lost sight of what they're trying to do, because like Android continues to be more steps and more cumbersome to do little simple things that you need to do, more clicks.
I think it's because everybody who needs to make a decision is so busy worrying about elections and lawsuits and antitrust and mergers. No one's really thinking about the computer science anymore.
How do we make Android better? Like just a better user experience.
No one is thinking about that.
Yeah.
They hired 5 guys to think about that, and they're all just like making woke posts on the internal message
No,
board.
I was going to say those people are probably like me, where they're trying to get the work done, and then they have 20 people telling them 20 different conflicting things, and then it ends up like a horrible mess.
You almost have the UI done, and they're like, "Hey, Krista, we're all getting together in the conference room because Bob's kids are getting deported, and we're going to protest that." And you're like, "But this is launching.
There's
next
cake
week."
in the conference room.
Krista, he's from Costa Rica. So yeah,
I think that's a reoccurring, not the woke part, but just the reoccurring problem of too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yes.
and getting too big.
Yes.
Yeah.
They need a couple architects that's like, this is what it has to be, and they have to be people that are not awful people.
And Lena Khan's standing there with a butcher knife, like, "I'll solve it. I'll take care of it. You want to be smaller? I'll make you smaller." Well, PayPal, for a while now, they've been letting us trade cryptocurrency. I haven't heard a lot of hype about PayPal cryptocurrency. You know anybody that's used it?
No.
Apparently some people are, though, and they're expanding it.
PayPal launches its cryptocurrency service in the UK.
Okay.
It's not much more.
That's literally it.
They're doing it.
Are you in the UK using PayPal's new services?
Yeah,
Tell
let us know. Forum.level1text.com.
Also, it is pouring rain.
Yeah.
I don't know if the mics are picking that up.
25% chance.
I need to go check if the attic is leaking at some point.
Oh, is that happening again?
I hope it doesn't hail.
I'm not 100% sure that I found where the water was coming in that one time it rained like this.
Well, we continue to get amazingly juicy nuggets out of this Apple stuff. Was this part of the court case? Is that where we got this from?
Yes.
And man, how? Okay, so this is not the first time this happened. Wouldn't, if you were in this situation after the first big lawsuit and all the discovery, wouldn't everything you put in your phone be going through this filter?
Yeah, I would think so.
But apparently not. They are very cavalier about what they do on their internal chat.
Apple's anti-fraud chief says the company was the greatest platform for distributing the really bad stuff that I'm not going to say because the algorithm, because YouTube has big business in finding whatever. But yeah, and it's because Apple was saying that because our platform is so secure and so private that people can form private groups and nobody knows what goes on inside the private groups, but this really bad stuff is traveling through Apple servers and we have to fix that, which was the first step in killing the goose that lays golden eggs.
And that hash checking that the big controversy about them doing it on Google Cloud, turns out they've already been doing that in Google Mail.
Or iMessage.
All right. Was it both?
Yeah, it's any kind of like mail application.
So a lot of people, when he made that comment, people were like, "Wait a minute, how would you know?"
And it turns out, though, remember the story from last week where people were making the colliding hashes because a lot of this stuff is happening client side? It's happening on your phone and on your computer, not in the cloud.
Meanwhile, that privacy that they tout so much, yeah, it is very secure on their end, but you have to do your part as well, and most people do not understand it.
Well, a Puente man steals 620,000 iCloud photos in plot to find images of nude women. Basically, he was guessing and recovering their passwords.
No, he was phishing them.
Or phishing them.
Yeah,
getting
so
their passwords.
he would actually target, I'm not sure exactly, I guess on social media, he would target beautiful women, and then he would go about his attacks. They weren't very high tech. And then he had some friends, and they would, whenever one of them would get a hit, they would all share the images. What a monster, right? He's got a quote here about, oh, poor guy.
He expressed fears that the public exposure of his crimes would ruin his whole life.
Wow, he should have thought about that, when he was making public private images of women and how that might ruin their whole lives.
And I'm remorseful for what I did, but I have a family. Krista, what would your response be if hubby came home and he was like, listen, Krista, sit down. I got to talk to you about something. got a little legal trouble coming up.
Ooh.
But I'm remorseful.
Bad things. Bad things. Yeah, and if this guy said that same thing to me, why didn't, like, when he gave that interview, did the interviewer just stand up and slap him? Or do you listen to yourself? Do you just jabber and there's just like a low hum in the background? Like,
yeah, there's no justifying that.
Yeah.
And he wasn't even selling it. It was all for his personal consumption and sharing with his friends. Which in a way makes it worse, don't you think?
Yeah.
It's weird, yeah.
Well, Google loves being the default search engine. How much do they love being the default search engine? You can quantify it.
$15 billion. Google is going to pay Apple $15 billion to remain the default Safari search engine.
Now, we don't know that from the horse's mouth. We're kind of extrapolating from some other stuff, but I believe it wholeheartedly.
Oh,
don't
yeah.
you?
Yeah.
God, that shows you how powerful that is.
Yeah.
And probably why we shouldn't allow it. Now, we kind of already covered this in the other story.
Apple already scans iCloud Mail for CSAM, but not iCloud Photos. Not yet, but soon.
Well, the thunder is getting outrageous.
Maybe that'll drop the temperature a little bit. That'd be nice.
Yeah. I wonder, I'll be interested to see the comments this week to see if anybody could hear it.
Oh, I'm sure they can. But it's definitely getting colder outside because the air conditioners are having less trouble keeping up with all the lights and everything on.
Yeah, the grind is less.
Yeah.
The air's getting colder on me. Well, it's been a while. We used to do these every week, but they kind of stopped reporting it because it was the same thing. It's not going to stop. But now, when you just look at the quarterly numbers, it is staggering.
Cable TV lost 1.1 million subscribers last quarters. They went here.
That's just the clickbait headline. They went to Netflix.
Yeah, why would you pay for cable?
It was not. So the decline is lessening, but the article author surmises that the reason the rate of decline is lessening, is because there's not a lot of people left to unsubscribe.
Right.
That green line is definitely not. It's just a solid downward trend. There's not a single month where it's like, oh, this month a lot of people picked up cable. Not anymore.
Yeah, Spectrum is begging me. Every time I get my internet bill, they also send me an envelope that's like, exclusive offer, please buy cable. And I'm like, no, I don't want it.
Cable literally is awful, but I also, we got to take a second to pour one out for that service that would rebroadcast what you collected over the air. What was that? I can't remember.
Sling?
No, was it Sling? No,
Slingbox did that.
It was the one in New York where they had like an array of antennas where you would literally rent your own antenna in an effort to be compliant with the law. And they lost their case, and they should never have lost their case.
Yeah, but I mean, a judge and jury is not going to understand the nuances of that law.
Yeah. Well,
which is sad because that's their entire job.
The cable industry is partly responsible for that, and they deserve their fate.
Yeah.
No one's weeping over cable.
They more than deserve it. They deserve much worse. But it is fun to watch them decline.
No rending of garments here.
The sadness is most of those companies are also ISPs, and they're just fleecing us on the other end.
When they had the Adelphia court case, and the guy had the $36,000 elephant foot umbrella stand, somebody like the president or one of the Supreme Court justices should have had a big button that they hit to be like, something has gone very wrong in this industry. We need to bring the monopoly people to break it up, because there should never be, a pissing contest between executives at a cable company that is the extent that, we're having a debate about a $36,000 elephant foot umbrella stand. Like something, you just hit the button and then it's like, oh yeah, we got the cleaner team coming in to deal with that. And then it's not a problem anymore because that company doesn't exist anymore.
Man. I'm telling you, Lena Khan, she's there. she's in the shadows. She's got her shank. She's like an Aryan Brotherhood member with a life sentence. She's just looking to stab.
What was the thing that happens with Judge Dredd? Is like once you hit the criteria, then he can act with impunity.
She's just waiting.
Yeah.
She's got an Apple Watch. There's a percentage on it, and it's just ticking up slowly.
She slices her finger with the blade and licks the blood. Maintains eye contact.
You guys ever hear of Stitch Fix?
No, I never had.
It's a personal stylist app.
Yeah.
Website thing.
So, do you know anything else about it, Krista?
No.
Yeah.
Just what I read in the article, but no.
But what a weird thing to let someone else choose your clothing, huh? I mean, a lot of people do it.
Well, it was more like a stylist kind of thing, and it was like, hey, I think you'll look good on this stuff, and it's like, oh yeah, I do. That looks really good. And then they were able to grift some off the middle, which is that's a pretty good business model. Well,
they would also do like if you had like in my case, I'm very tall. Like if you have hard time finding like long pants, you would hire a stylist, and the stylist would go through looking through lots of listings for long inseams, and then they would send you stuff that would like fit you.
I think they could also buy it for you and drop ship it.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting service, and based on what we just described, obviously you don't need to be in a building or an office to do that. You can do that from anywhere, and you can do it at almost any time. You could, at least.
Stitch Fix took away flexible scheduling for its employees, and hundreds of them just quit. So Stitch Fix, there's a pretty good-sized company doing this. They've grown really well. It's intriguing.
I just can't imagine paying somebody for that.
Yeah, I personally wouldn't do it, but like in the article they were talking about like we know that they're probably just using us to train an AI to take the job. Like
yeah.
The AI is going to be the one recommending products. But like a lot of people who are customers of Stitch Fix were complaining because they already have an AI option, and they're like, I pay a higher fee to have a human do it because the AI never gets my measurements right. And now they're getting rid of all the people. So it's like, then why am I paying for Stitch Fix? Was kind of the vibe of the article. But
I think everybody should ask that question, even if they're happy with it.
Yeah.
Just do it yourself. Come on. Over time, couldn't you take some cues from that and be like, all right, I see where you're going with this?
Or figure out like where you're buying the clothes from, and then be like, oh, they have clothes that fit my particular body, so I should look for them. I don't know. I don't get it, but I mean, some people are willing to pay for it, so.
Well, remember T-Mobile got hacked? There is someone now claiming that he was the hacker, and he's doing interviews?
T-Mobile hacker explains how he breached the carrier's security. Wish that he hadn't released all that. Oops. But it turns out that it was just an unprotected router on their internal core network, which is like a security 101 failure.
He wasn't striking out to attack T-Mobile or anything. He just stumbled onto it and decided to go with it. That wasn't nice.
It was very not nice.
You know what else isn't nice? Well, it kind of is nice to a very small percentage of the population, but for everybody else, it's a big threat, and that is free trials. No credit card required.
Clearview AI offered free facial recognition trials to police all around the world. Because, look, we've got this amazing product. You're probably only going to put a few black people in jail erroneously. It's totally fine. Try it out. I was like, wow, we found all those people we were looking for. We found a guy, 2 towns over in Michigan. We arrested him immediately. Oops.
There was all this physical evidence that cleared him, but we know better.
We trust this free trial 100%.
I can't wait till we get to the story about the shot spotter thing, too. Remember how we're always talking about the shot spotter software? It's like, it can pinpoint gunshots in your city. Oh, not so much.
And the other thing about this
that was depressing.
That's crazy is apparently these law enforcement agencies, they depend on the chain of command in terms of requisition, right? So you don't use Clearview AI because you need a signature from up high to say that you can pay to use Clearview AI. But when they give it to you for free, you don't need any clearance at all.
It's fine.
So low-level guys would go to a conference, Clearview would be like, hey, here's a password. And all of a sudden they're using Clearview AI with no oversight at all.
The first one's free, and then it's like, wow, this is really good. We got so many more arrests.
Yeah. I bet that happened a lot of times.
Yes.
A lot of conversions, I bet.
A lot of conversions.
And here's a terrifying thing, because obviously we talk a lot about VPNs. You don't want your ISP looking at your traffic because, they sell your DNS information. You don't want people looking at how you might be circumventing certain things, stealing Netflix.
I would never.
But what you might not know is that you're not as safe as you think.
How data brokers sell access to the backbone of the internet. ISPs are quietly distributing quote-unquote net flow data that can, among other things, trace traffic through VPNs. This doesn't trace the contents of the traffic, just where your traffic is. So with NetFlow data, you can see the end IP address, like your IP address as a consumer, and if you have enough NetFlow data, you can follow that all the way back to Norway or Sweden or Iceland or Finland or Germany or Oman or whatever, and see that, oh, they're on a VPN.
And if some company like, I don't know, Disney or HBO has an IP address, and they're like, this IP address is a pirate, and they go to follow it, and they're like, oh, that's a VPN. Well, guess what? Buy the NetFlow data, tie the originating IP with that IP and the timestamp, and guess what?
You found them.
Disney lawyers on your doorstep.
I bet
No one
Disney
wants
will
that.
make an example of several people doing that.
Yes.
And
they
then
absolutely will.
everyone will be too afraid. And then everyone will have a Disney Plus subscription.
And you know, we didn't really need to collect that information in the first place, except for the express purpose of de-anonymizing internet traffic. That's the only useful thing for that, really.
Well, only terrorists want to anonymize their internet traffic, after all.
Oh, well, obviously.
And speaking of terrorists, Mr. Lukashenko from Belarus has been there's been some accusations toward that area.
This was this week's black hole of time in the news, because it's like, oh, I'll have enough time to read these. You go in this one, and this one, it just turned into a black hole of like, wow, this is our dark future. Like what's happening in Belarus is what's going to happen in the whole world, not too distant future.
He's a bit of a monster. And this was, I suppose, what you would call hacktivism, right?
Hackers released data trove from Belarus in bid to overthrow Lukashenko regime. So what you got to understand here is that the Lukashenko regime is super paranoid and really good at like disinformation and faking stuff, but they were doing geofence warrants before it was in vogue. They were figuring out what towers were where. They had stuff like stingrays where they could monitor cell towers, and so they're really super plugged into a lot of things. There's millions of hours of audio surveillance that these hackers have captured, because this is all like, you know, what the thing I always say is like, you've given chimps a bunch of machine guns. I don't mean that in kind of a racist way. I mean that they're using this really advanced technology without understanding it. And because they're using this really advanced technology without understanding it, they're not using it in a safe way. And so all of this surveillance that they've collected, the hackers have been able to collect, and there's a lot of really damning stuff in there against the Lukashenko regime. So
I gotta say, though, the balls on this hacker. Because if he gets caught, ooh, that is it.
Yeah.
That's it for his family, probably.
Yeah.
Tough. But gotta applaud him, right?
Yeah.
I guess he's doing the right thing. This is where we get 500 comments supporting Lukashenko from brand new accounts.
Those were amazing when we were talking about some of the kidney harvesting festivals.
Anything Jinping.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just like,
That happens everywhere on the internet. It's weird.
This is a bot. This is incredible.
Well, Samsung has a very interesting feature on their televisions that I bet you didn't know about if you own one, and I bet you won't like it. Now, this is in South Africa, but did they not admit this is worldwide, right?
Yes.
Every set
absolutely.
has this possibility.
Samsung South Africa activates TV block functionality to render all TV sets useless that were looted and stolen in July. So there was a thing that happened in July. There was some looting and some stealing. Samsung figured out which TVs that was by serial number, and now when they check in with the mothership, they brick themselves.
Yikes.
Unauthorized television.
And that's off forever unless you contact them and give them a valid receipt for your purchase. Secondhand Samsung TV that gets caught up in this? Sorry.
Oh.
Yeah. Krista, please give us your South African impression.
South Africa. Is that good? That's not very good, I don't think.
Sounds
okay.
vaguely Australian.
South
It's not
African is
supposed
a
to be
hard one.
Australian. It's supposed to be South African.
South Africa has like a real twang to it, though.
They clip their words more than Australians.
Yeah.
That's the difference. Well, another big botnet attack and more devices that are inherently unsafe. Every week we get it. Here's this week's.
Hundreds of thousands of Realtek-based devices under attack from IoT botnet. This is because of a flaw in Realtek's system on chip. So they put, the Ethernet interface and the actual microprocessor, everything. So it's just on one microcontroller. Turns out I had a flaw. So you can exploit a flaw in the driver from the network side, take over the whole device, and then bam, you've got a botnet.
Like they said, yeah, just take a picture of a commercial router switch, wireless, and just blur it.
Yeah,
it's
this
gonna
is
be cool.
the weird. It's like a low video game quality art.
Make it look kind of like a two-legged spider upside down.
Not a lot of effort.
The record.media. Some of these are paywall alternatives.
Yeah.
They're not always the best. But God bless them for not having a paywall. And another big leak, and it's once again misconfigured apps. Gosh, when will we learn? I don't think we ever will.
38 million records were exposed online, including contact tracing info. Misconfigured power apps from Microsoft led to more than 1,000 web apps accessible to anyone who found them. So this is just the APIs. We're entering an age where you're running all this stuff online, you create an API for something, and then you build your website in front of the API. And if the website is the thing that's responsible for authentication and the end user can see the API that you're using, what's to stop the end user from just connecting directly to the API, which may have all of the records? Oops, that's what happened here.
Now, one of my big criticisms of Linux on the desktop is the driver situation. It's not good. I know a lot of people wear it like a cross, but it's not good. But I got to admit, when you go too far in the other direction, you can get into some trouble, which is what has happened with Razer and Windows.
Razer Bug lets you become a Windows 10 admin by plugging in a mouse. So this really cool thing in Windows, or not, is when you plug it in, it downloads the drivers from the internet automatically. And it just so happens that Razer's driver installer runs as the system user, which is even higher privilege than administrator. The driver installer will also let you spawn an Explorer window because it'll let you browse for where you want to put stuff. You can right-click, open a new window, and then bam. You've got an Explorer window that you can just run arbitrary programs at the system level. Razer said, we should probably fix that.
Bleeping Computer was nice enough to point out the cheapest Razer mouse you can get on Amazon. So if you want to get started, if you have physical access to someplace, that's really all you need.
Yeah, don't do that. That's a good way to get yourself in a lot of trouble.
You do have to have some kind of account as well. You have to be able to get in to get to the driver installer.
Yeah.
But that's pretty easy to do.
Yeah. It's like the printer driver thing. It's like, oh, let's install a buggy printer driver that's been signed by Microsoft.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
Took advantage of that, but this is so much simpler than that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It really is. What do we got lined up for Friday?
Nonsense and a massive robot.
Oh yeah,
section
robot
this
was
week.
long this week.
Yeah,
A lot of robots.
I've been sprinkling space in there too, though. Robot space. A lot of space news. Yeah, we're into this new space race era. It's
The
exciting.
Space Force. All right, we'll see you then, chat.
South African goodbye, please.
Oh, I'm trying to hear a South African accent in my head. Good boy.
That's okay.
Kind of Australian. Bye.